climate change latest, NASA is warning that rising seas are accelerating. The increase of sea level rise is accelerating and will trigger storms and floods. Climate change is threatening to trigger widespread flooding and storms along all coastal areas worldwide, accelerating the rates of sea levels and ocean rising. This is according to NASA Space Agency's latest warning. We've seen the latest example of this in the UK, with the rivers overflowing because of the rain, the latest rain, but it's also, of course, in the areas of the Pacific, especially when the Antarctica melt is first rising, the sea levels there. The Solomon Islands are having a tremendous problem, for example. Now, climate change significantly contributed to the rising sea levels over the last 25 years, but there's more to come, and it'll just get worse. NASA is warning that more heat is being trapped in the oceans. Ocean temperatures are rising, and as a result of the climate change. And in turn, the world's ice caps at the polar regions are melting at fantastic rates, and they're expected to continue accelerating in the coming years. Josh Willis from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, said, "Global sea level rise is, in a way, the most complete measure of how humans are changing the climate. If you think about it, global sea level rise means 70% of Earth's surface is getting taller, 70% of the planet is changing its shape and it's growing. So it's the whole planet changing. That's what we're really measuring. Now, as the sea levels rise, NASA expects to see more coastal flooding, of course, and erosion in the future." One example, I used to live in New York. One example is the fact that New York, let's say Long Island, for example, is low-lying. The average elevation is only 50 feet above sea level. That's frightening. The oceans help stabilize the Earth's climate by absorbing up to 90% of the heat trapped in our atmosphere. But as the rise in greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, that means more heat is being trapped in our planet. The oceans also absorb more and more of that heat, which can have a devastating impact on the atmosphere, on our weather. One of the impacts, according to NASA, is the increased likelihood of storms and damage to marine wildlife, for example. Dr. Willis said, "Global sea levels rise is one of the most expensive, disruptive impacts of climate change that there is. Most of the disasters that we have are flooding disasters, from what I recently saw. I quickly glanced and briefed over an article. Most are, apart from anything else, earthquakes or wildfires, for example, it's flooding. Now, in our lifetimes, we're not going to see global sea levels fall by a meaningful amount. We're literally, he says, charting how much sea level rise we're going to have to deal with for the next several generations. And there's a bid to better understand the impacts of this climate change. NASA is working on the JASON CS Sentinel-6 mission. The satellite developed by NASA, JPL, and European Space Agency will spend the next 10 years in orbit to scan and the impacts of climate change. We've recently seen, for example, from, 1960s up to now, a temperature anomaly of a rise of 1 degree Celsius, according to NASA's Golet Institute for Space Studies, which is the land-ocean temperature index. Now, by the year 2030, NASA expects the spacecraft to build a top of sea level records collection over the past 40 years. NASA said JASON Sentinel-6 will be the longest tuning mission dedicated to finding out by how much the oceans will rise in the next 10 years. The mission consists of two satellites, the Sentinel-6A and 6B, that will launch 5 years apart. The first of the two spacecraft being prepared for a launch date November 15, 2020, from California's Vandenberg Air Force Base. and NASA's satellite will fly into orbit on board a SpaceX Falcon rocket. The satellite will not only look at rising sea levels, it'll also study ocean currents, annual weather patterns, and of course hurricanes and storms. And NASA says Earth's seas are rising, a direct result of changing climate. Ocean temperature is increasing, leading to ocean expansion, and as ice sheets and glaciers melt, they add more water. An armada of increasingly sophisticated instruments deployed across the oceans on polar ice and in orbit reveal significant changes among globally interlocking factors that are driving sea levels higher. Okay, so we have a temperature increase on Earth, man-made, I'm sure, okay, as opposed to, of course, the Industrial Revolution never having taken place. Obviously, we wouldn't have the greenhouse effects that we have today. But we have to remember that taking it as a whole of what's happening in our solar system, there are other planets, for example, the outer planets, that are being heated up for some reason. And they believe that it could be because of something influencing the temperatures and changing the tilts of the planets on the outer skirts of our solar system. Something could be out there heating them up. Perhaps Earth is also being heated up because of that. We don't know. But still, it's not a good thing that we have all this sea level rise because of the fact that most of our cities worldwide are near the coasts and near rivers. And if they rise, that means it's a problem for the populations there, obviously. And here are some NASA simulations for you. This first one is from NASA. You can see the temperature rise as well, especially on the graph on the bottom, up to 2012, whatever. And the second one is from the Global Situation Space Sea Level Rise from the World Economic Forum. And they basically concentrate on the Indian Ocean. You can see the amount of land that is flooded around India. And also they go towards the Caribbean, and I would say that most of Florida is wiped out, as well as the Louisiana and Gulf area of the United States and Mexico. And it's not only there, but of course this would be worldwide. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.